Hey everybody, Arnaldo here, broadcasting from Fidelio's Frequency. Welcome to my channel, and welcome to another episode of Album Covers of New York, the miniseries that focuses on location and facts about album covers that were shot in New York City. And as you probably noticed from the thumbnail, as well as some of the images behind me and the title of the video, today we will be taking a look at an album by Led Zeppelin, which celebrates this year its 50th anniversary. I believe just a month ago was the 50th anniversary of its release, and that is Physical Graffiti. So cue the intro, and then we'll take a walk down the street and find the location of the album cover. So for today's album cover of New York City, we are headed down to New York's East Village, and precisely on St. Mark's Place, to take a look at an album cover that has become probably one of the most iconic covers in rock and roll history. And let's take a walk down St. Mark's Place and let's see what we stumble upon. So here we are, folks, the location of the Led Zeppelin cover, Physical Graffiti, on St. Mark's Place in New York City. Physical Graffiti, the sixth album by Led Zeppelin, was released on February 24th, 1975. It just celebrated its 50th anniversary a few weeks ago. And it is the first album released by the band on their Swan Song label, their own imprint, although it wasn't the very first album released on Swan Song, the label itself. They had released it towards the end of 1974, two albums already, the self-titled album by Bad Company, as well as Silk Torpedoes by The Pretty Things. And while we're talking about the Swan Song label, and before we get into the artwork of the album Physical Graffiti, let's touch upon briefly the Swan Song label, designed by Hypnosis and most specifically by Joe Pantano. And it shows an image that is inspired by a William Rimmer painting, Fall of the Day. So a little bit like Icarus as well. I've always liked the image of the Swan Song label. But now let's get to the album cover, the artwork of Physical Graffiti, how unique it was for the time. As you can see here, it is a die cut. It's a label with a die cut cover, and die cut means that it has little holes in it or some kind of cutout in the artwork in the actual jacket, cardboard jacket. The front shows us the building during the daytime, and the back shows us the building towards the nighttime. And when it was displayed correctly, you would see that all the shades are down at the nighttime, and the shades are also down on the daytime. However, they spell out the album title, Physical Graffiti. And it's because what is showing is the insert. And the insert is let's call it a wrap gatefold. And it has the credits of where it was recorded, song titles, and inside it has 2 inner sleeves that show images of various people in the windows, as you see here, the daytime and the nighttime windows. And you can play around inserting these sleeves inside the album cover and make your own unique album cover. We'll get to a little bit more detail about who is in the windows of Physical Graffiti in a minute, but I just wanted to touch upon briefly about the building itself. Where it's located, it is on St. Mark's Place, which is the stretch of street of 8th Street between Avenue A and 3rd Avenue in downtown New York, specifically the area that is called the East Village. And initially it was home towards the beginning of the century, 1900s I'm talking, to artists and bohemians. And the area underwent a lot of transformation, and especially with the development of the subway system. And the street was eventually reconstructed and features a lot of 4 or 5-story residential buildings all along this stretch of street that is called St. Mark's Place. In 1977, St. Mark's Place was the epicenter of punk rock. Many clothing stores were present along St. Mark's, most notably The Late Show, as well as Trash and Vaudeville. Trash and Vaudeville I did get a chance to see, and I believe it is still in business. However, it's no longer on St. Mark's Place. I believe it moved 1 or 2 streets up on a parallel street. I don't remember exactly if it's 10th or 9th Street. I've been going to St. Mark's Place since I first moved here 30 years ago, and it still changes. Initially, for the first 10, 15 years that I lived in New York City, I would always go down to St. Mark's Place for CD shopping. It had a stretch of between, I think it was 3rd Avenue and 2nd Avenue, filled with CD stores, and there were 1 or 2 record stores, most notably Sounds, Kim's, as well as Joe CDs. I used to love going down there, and at the time I was still in college, in my first job, so I really didn't have that much disposable income, and it was a treasure trove of finding used CDs at a exceptional price. As the CD landscape has changed, the buying landscape has changed, all of those stores unfortunately shuttered. Some also pushed out by the higher rents because the area was becoming very trendy. New coffee shops, bubble tea shops, a couple of franchises started moving in and raised the let's call it the social and cultural vibe of the neighborhood, which was always known as a neighborhood for artists and students that lived on that street with very affordable, quote unquote, for Manhattan rents that all of a sudden now are faced to move out. And to the extent that some of the buildings, some of these beautiful historical 5- and 4-story buildings have been torn down and replaced by some really ugly condos. So that's a little bit about the area, the street, and more specifically about the building that we're talking about at 90. It's 2 buildings side by side, 96 and 98 on St. Mark's Place. If you looked closely at the video, you'll see that it is a 5-story building, whereas here you can only count 4 stories. Well, the designer, and let's name the designer of the album cover, Peter Coriston, along with Mike Dowd from AGI, the company that designed this artwork, the album cover, had to shave off the 4th floor in order to make it fit the square format 12 by 12 of an album cover. So that for me was a discovery. When I actually went for the very first time and looked at these buildings, I did notice that they were taller than what's represented on the cover, hence the explanation of removing a floor. And I mentioned earlier the notable figures that appear in all of these windows, in the front, in the back, and depending on how you choose to insert the inner sleeves, they of course will change. Some images are very familiar celebrities. We have the Wizard of Oz, King Kong is featured, Laurel and Hardy, Lee Harvey Oswald, Buzz Aldrin, Charles Atlas, the bodybuilder, Queen Elizabeth, the Pope Leo XIII, Flash Gordon, Elizabeth Taylor. I'm sure there's a lot more that I didn't recognize. There's actually 2 excerpts of very famous paintings, one by Leonardo da Vinci and one by Caravaggio. So very interesting. A lot of work went into creating this album cover in terms of design as well as the manufacturing process. Today, something like this would be very expensive. I bet it was expensive even back then. And the album cover, or the designers, were nominated for a Grammy that year, but unfortunately they lost out to the album cover from the Ohio Players album called Honey. In my opinion, that is a great photo. Very iconic as well. My vote would have gone for Physical Graffiti. And one more piece of trivia regarding these 2 iconic buildings, and most specifically one in particular, I believe it's number 98, was featured in a very popular, very famous video by the Rolling Stones, Waiting on a Friend, where you see Mick Jagger hanging out on the stoop of number 98. And in the shot, there is also Peter Tosh, who is sitting down on the stoop. After Keith Richards arrives, they take a stroll down the street, and they walk down the street to another location of that was featured in that video, the St. Mark's Bar and Grill, which is no longer there, but is housed in this was housed in this same restaurant or bar that is still there on the corner. And that wraps it up for another episode of Album Covers of New York. And I hope to have another episode of the series ready for you shortly. But thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate all your interaction. Please leave a comment with any questions that I may be able to answer. Give it a thumbs up if you liked the video, or a thumbs down if you didn't. And once again, final reminder, thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. If you haven't done so, please click that subscription button. And I guess that's it for today. Thank you once again for watching, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.